Hello, hello. Hey there, Selena. Hello, Laura. And Liara. How are you guys all doing? Glad to have you back here as always. And Ray. Hello, hello, Ray. Of course, always excited to see you too. Oh, that's right. Liara got to meet Ashen Bride of FFXIV. I saw that right before I went live here. You posted it in my Discord. That's awesome, Liara. I would have been fangirling for sure too. Was she just standing there in the road like your photo showed? Alara, that's so you. That sounds exactly like what you do. You got personality, you know? You're memorable, right? Lots of people probably say, "Oh hey, wow, I seen your streams since /Ashen," you know? But you could say you told him you had to go reap some souls. I mean, I'd say that's a pretty good response. There's definitely a handful of people who have kind of risen to understandably almost like minor celebrity standards in the housing scene, and deservingly so, I think, too. Like Ashen, Sint, Div, Rhapsody, the people who made HDXIV, as well as like on the Japanese side, there's some as well, you know, Nora Kiba and that kind of thing. Because yeah, it's kind of crazy, you know, you bring up some of these names and like everybody across the board is like, oh yeah, super inspired by them. I learned so much from what they're doing. And yeah, I love it. I mean, I think, while I'm sure they probably would say, oh, you know, you don't, I guess, like, not to say we need to put people on pedestals or anything like that, but those are like definitely some people who deserve a lot of love and recognition for all of the hard work that they have put into making this community what it is. Because it really would, yeah, it would not be, I mean, in some sense, right, like the housing community above all other sub-communities within Final is like almost entirely driven by the fans, you know? Since like, and I say that in the sense of like, you know, that Square Enix kind of gave us their version of housing, right? Which is like, oh, put a couch down and you can like arrange it however you want. But in terms of like all the glitches and like all of the techniques that we do to make all the complex layering and, you know, like all of that stuff, like all the resources too, right? Like how to float stuff, how to do all these techniques we're going to talk about today. Like all of this has been discovered by fans and is like all fan driven. And I think that that's so cool though, that it's like become its own like mini huge subset of Final Fantasy, despite the fact that housing is, in the grand scheme of things, such a minor portion. Also, by the way, hello, Aramore. I saw you pop in earlier. How's it going, man? how's that the club build that you guys are working on? Or I guess I'm not sure if it's like specifically a club, but I know you guys got your big large Ishgard house. What do you guys how's that going along? Oh, it's 100% a club. Awesome. Walling everything off, but it's a club at this point. All right. Yeah, I can't wait. Hopefully everybody in our Discord gets an invite to your grand opening party sometime. Looking forward to seeing what you guys have created. In fact, I'm always just so excited to see what all of you guys have been creating, because there's been so many wonderful creations already. Also, for anybody who is joining us for the Housing 201 course, hello and welcome. I'm Noah Saitoshii. That's me on the screen right there, smiling at you. I really wish that we could toggle a default mode where our character, like not in G pose, is just smiling. You know, like it's just so like I look so disgruntled. You know, when I'm not in G pose, and then you can't have it be persistent, like smiling and stuff. I'll slash beam though. There you go, everybody. I'm smiling. I'm happy. Don't worry about it. But yes, hello, everybody. If you're just joining us, or if you're watching this in the future, hello and welcome to Housing 201, your second year of housing, as it were, based off of the college numbering system. So I just initially wanted to, of course, say hello to everybody who's here on the stream, and give a few minutes for people to kind of trickle in, because I know some people might be coming from other streams or just finding their way from, I don't know, the Twitterverse or whatever. What have you. But I will start now and give a little introduction. So in case you are new and just finding me here, yeah, like I said, as I said, that's me here on the screen. I'm Noah Saitoshii. I stream housing every week, Monday and Wednesday, or almost every week. I have had to take a couple of days off here and there. But yeah, and I've been playing Final Fantasy since April of 2020, right when the pandemic started. And I got into housing, I think, June-ish of that year, in an apartment like we are in right now, in a simple apartment. And that's where I learned all the techniques and everything. I practiced these in an apartment, so I can say firsthand that you can learn housing with just an apartment. And I know that it took me a while to get the hang of housing, right? And now, though I've done quite a lot of it, I've built a number of builds, and I wanted to share some of that knowledge with all of you. And it's also been highly requested by people from my community that I show some sort of longer form tutorials, right? There's a lot of amazing tutorials online on YouTube that are more, I guess, maybe succinct and scripted tutorials where they'll run through a whole bunch of different housing techniques, and they're wonderful. But here on this stream, we're gonna go a little bit slower. You're gonna be able to build along with me. And on this stream, I'm going to quickly do a recap of what we did on the previous stream. So here we go. This is the lesson plan for today. So on the lesson plan for today, let's actually go to my alternate screen, maybe. Okay. So here we go. We have the lesson plan for today. So we're going to review the basics that we learned in Housing 101 on Monday. Just for quick refresher, I just want to make sure that anybody who is just only able to join today just understands both where to get the information that they need to follow along, as well as in case maybe you missed a small portion of last week's, you'll kind of get a little refresher right now. And then we're going to go into some more advanced techniques of housing, such as cranes and mega cranes, custom ceilings and bed meta, hidden NPCs and mannequins, like custom weapon displays, how to get under the stairs. So this is, the last two items are going to be, we're going to go out of the apartment and going to go into a house. And I'm going to show you a few things when you first get your house, because I know a lot of people have just gotten houses because of the whole Ishgard ward getting released. So today's stream is, again, going to be, I have a little bit of a recap of the most basic stuff, but then we're going to move on to some more intermediate to advanced techniques. So hopefully you're able to follow along. If not though, I mean, no problem. The VOD for this stream is going to be up after the stream, so you can always go back and rewatch any part that you missed. And I'll take this time right now to say that the VOD for the very first stream, Housing 101, in which we looked at these things. So Housing 101, we covered these topics, and the VOD for that is already live, both here on my Twitch channel, but more importantly, it's on my YouTube channel now. And as on Monday, I mentioned I had just launched my YouTube channel, but I hadn't had a chance to officially release videos onto it yet. But now I can say all of my housing streams so far, except for the one obviously you're hearing right now, they're all live on my YouTube channel. So if you look down in my Twitch description below, or the panels, I have my YouTube channel linked. And so every housing stream I've done so far is uploaded to that YouTube channel for your viewing, reviewing, and sharing pleasure. So please go have a look at that. Especially if you missed Housing 101, go take a look at that. I also went through and did timestamps of all the major points that I talk about in Housing 101. I'm working on getting chapters for all the other streams as well, but I figured first and foremost I wanted to make sure that if people were watching this stream, they had a way to catch up and learn what they missed. So yes, Housing 101 is now up on my YouTube channel, along with the rest of my housing streams, including a housing tour of Ether DC and Crystal DC, my builds for my community. So yeah, absolutely, if you haven't already, drop me a subscribe over there, / just take a look at the channel and help me sort of spread the word about that to friends who might benefit from that. Because I'm going to be taking down the videos from my Twitch VOD section, because that's not really a good permanent home for them. So for future, I'll probably always have like a couple Twitch VODs up, maybe like the most recent or something. But as soon as I'm able to get them over to YouTube, that's really where I want them to live. So go take a look at that. There'll be timestamps. There already are timestamps for the Housing 101. So it'd be really easy for you to jump to any section that you missed, or if you want to review something. So please have a look at that. And I don't know if anyone cares about this, but it's something that I know, like I am thinking about is I have not had a chance to put like banner art and a real official like about section on YouTube and then thumbnails. So it's a little crude looking at the moment, but all that stuff is coming. I'm hard at work making it happen. I just got to go bit by bit. Okay, so with all that stuff out of the way, thank you for everybody bearing with me for this that first bit. Let's really quickly do a review of all the basics that we talked about in Housing 101, just to make sure that anybody who's tuning in right now has a quick way to reference a bunch of the stuff, right? Okay, so in Housing 101, we talked about these items. So let's have a quick run through of that. Okay, so first things first, once you get a house, if you're just starting out with housing, the first thing I recommend that you buy is I recommend that you go to a housing merchant in any one of the major housing wards and you buy a Hakonin and a Junkmonger NPC permit. Okay, so what does that item look like? The item looks like this. Hakonen permit and Junkmonger permit. In this case, it's A3. That's just telling you the type of Junkmonger. It can be any Junkmonger though, it doesn't matter. I just happen to like this aesthetic because it matches the Hingen aesthetic of the apartment that we are in right now. Why do we want these two NPCs? Because the Hakonen is where we can buy a bunch of vendor housing NPC items. So, or they're vendor NPC housing items, there you go. So all of these different categories here have stuff that you can use to build your house, and they're very cheap, and anybody can do this and get access to these items. So I think it's a great starting place so you don't have to constantly run out to the market board and be buying stuff. And probably because you might be a little bit strapped for cash when you first get started. So there's so much you can do though with just the vendor NPC items. And then why the Junkmonger? Because he gives us dyes, pretty specifically. There's a few other things that you might want from him, but the most important thing is that we want the dyes because you'll probably want to dye some of your furniture once you get it. Okay. So first item on that Housing 101 was we wanted the starter kit items. Housing starter kit, once we have the Hakonen, we can buy everything that we need to do all of the tricks for housing, pretty much. I'm gonna go through a couple more advanced ones today, but for the basic stuff, all you need to get started is you need to just go to the Hakonen, go to this walls, partitions section, and get a stage panel here. And then you're gonna want a round wooden loft and an antique wall shelf. Alternatively, you could also go to the market board or craft a wood slat partition, which functions pretty much the same thing as the stage panel. You can also get a wooden loft, which is just a square version. So this is the round version on the NPC, but the crafted version is a square version. It's a little bit easier to visualize and work with. And instead of an antique wall shelf, you also may opt to get a Riviera wall shelf. And if you watch older tutorials of housing, they pretty much will all tell you to use the Riviera wall shelf and wooden loft because we didn't have the antique wall shelf and the round wooden loft prior to 6.1 or 6.0. Yeah, we didn't have them until very recently. So that's why most of the older videos will tell you to go craft or buy these off the market board. And it's nice because at least the Riviera wall shelf allows you to dye it, so it's useful to keep track of it if that helps you visually distinguish it from other items. So once we have those items, we want to set some keybinds. Again, all of this is covered in 101, so I'm going to go kind of quickly here. But basically, in order to do housing, you go to your keybind menu, you go to system, and you want to have display subcommands set to something, right? This one here, display subcommands. And then, oh, let me make sure you can see this. Okay, so you display subcommand and then confirm. We need to have those two set. And then some other nice to haves that I think are very useful are if you can activate your controller controls. I'm using a mouse and keyboard. This is how I learned housing, so I apologize to any controller users out there. I don't know all the controls for controller, but even though I'm using a mouse and keyboard, if you activate the controller controls, in order to utilize the buttons that they have, and you bind the L2 button and the R2 button, this allows you to rotate your items, your housing items, while you're holding them. A few other small little things you might want to keybind are you might want to have a little hotkey for the actual housing menu to get to the housing menu. You may want to figure out a keybind for showing and hiding your HUD. Right, so more dramatic view here. There you go, showing and hiding your HUD. You may want to figure out which key that works with. And you also want to probably figure out how to toggle between running and walking. Okay. So now, all this stuff quickly in action. That's the controls and keybinds. The basic float. So the basic float, you'll take a stage panel. And let's grab a table. I think I actually have one here. There we go. So you can have this basic float works for floating any ground furnishing. How this works is you have an item, you take a wooden loft or your antique wall shelf, and basically what you need to do is you need to figure out the middle point of this item. So if you hold your rotate tool, grab the item, whatever the item may be, you'll see the rotate symbol. That's the middlemost point of the item. Okay. If it was a larger item, same thing, rotate tool, that's the middle point. The big important thing when you're floating is that your floating mechanism item, so your wooden loft or your wall shelf, needs to hit this middle point and especially needs to hit the base of the object for many items. Some items like this big pond and some of the beds, you actually don't need to technically hit the very bottom, but it's important that your float item overlaps with this middle section. Okay, so let's take this back over here. Okay, so your basic float is going to, you need your wall shelf or your wooden loft in your inventory. This is important, right? So you have a stage panel out, laid down on the floor. It's going to be very close to the item you want to float, in this case, a table. We are going to pull out our loft or wall shelf, whichever one you prefer, and we want to make sure that we are going to be able to hit the base of this item and that it intersects with the middle. So as you can see, in this case, it will intersect with the middle as well as the base of this table. And what I'm going to do is make sure I have, see the orange here, so it's placeable. And what I'm going to do though is I'm going to place the item and then I'm going to hit escape in a rhythmic fashion, which is going to then pop the item up off the ground. The timing of this is roughly place escape. So you don't need to go super fast. It's not place escape, it's place escape. And this is something that you may have to do a little bit of trial and error with to get the timing down just right. But place escape. And this will soon become muscle memory to you as you do this more and more. So once you are faster at this, right, you can do it like this. So the important thing here is you're always connecting with the middle and the base of the item to pop it up. It pops up. You go back to your indoor furnishings and then you can move the loft back to your inventory. Again, it always has to be from inventory. And then you keep pushing this up, okay? Okay, so then once it's floated, it's important to be able to lock it in place. You must rotate the item. The simplest way to do this is you activate your rotate tool and then you click and unclick the item. That's all you need to do. You don't actually technically need to rotate it around. You only need to click and unclick it. So if I had 10 tables here, I would need to click, unclick, click, unclick, click, unclick, click, unclick, over and over and over again, and lock them all in place. And that creates a save state, per se, of where the item is floated. Also, if for some reason you see your item, you floated it up, but then, and it's floating off the ground there, but you exit the housing menu and the item pops back down to the ground like you just saw there, it's because it has not met the minimum float height requirement. And the minimum float height requirement is basically a thing that happens when you're housing. Every item in the game has to meet a minimum floated height off the ground before you're able to lock it in place and have it stay floating. This varies from item to item, and generally speaking, there's some parameters for understanding like how much it needs to be floated, but rule of thumb is basically the bigger the item, the wider it is, the higher you need to lift it off the ground. And so this is going to take some trial and error. You can also reference FFXIV. Shout out to FFXIV. FFXIV has a minimum float height guide that they've documented every single item in the game and what the minimum float height is. So if you go look them up, FFXIV.com, you can find their Google Doc, and in the Google Doc, they have a big housing guide that tells you all these techniques, much more in depth than I'm going to go today. And they have a minimum float height guide where you can see all that. And that's just to make sure that you can float all your items high enough so that they can actually stay floated in the air. Okay, so that's your basic float. The next one is going to be placing from storage. I call it place escape because I place an escape, but I think we found out last time that you don't always have to do this. So what this is, though, is if I'm placing an item down, you get the purple when you can't place it, right? So let's just say I'm trying to place this big pond, right? I cannot, and I want to get it closer to the wall. So even if I rotate it, I want to get closer to the wall, but I can never get it more than about there, right? So like, if I wanted it to be stuck into the wall, I can't do that, right? I could rotate it, but if I wanted it from this angle and into the wall, I can't do that. It literally actually cannot touch the wall based on just placing it like this, right? How do we get around something like this? If we have an item in our storage and we utilize the keybinds that we did at the beginning of this tutorial, right? Remember we had the display subcommand and the confirm? So we're going to make use of that right now. So what happens is instead of placing it from your inventory or just trying to place it down on the ground, what we need to do is position our character close to the wall, closer than probably you normally think about. And we're going to make sure we have in our housing menu display preview enabled, and then we're going to click the item and see how it just pops down in front of us. So while it's doing this, we are actually able to step it a lot closer to the wall than we normally would. Okay, and then we hit our hotkeys for display subcommand. You may have to hit this twice. And then you should see this menu pop up. Place, return to inventory, search for item, link. What we're going to do now is, with this popped open, don't touch anything else, and you're going to hit your confirm key. And then the item is going to drop in place there. And it's going to be able to position an item in positions that you normally wouldn't. I call this place escape because I often did it as placing and hitting escape, similar to floating. So I would do place escape. I think that I've found that sometimes that is necessary to get it to actually position itself like this. But I'm not 100% sure that it's always necessary. So you can play around with that and see how it works best for you. But do you see now how we have that pond way more stuck into the wall, right? In fact, the pond is half into the wall and half not in the wall. So that is placing items from storage. This also allows you to place items on the stairwell. This is important because this is going to come into play when we go underneath the stairs later today. Okay, so keep this in mind. Keep this in mind, this whole place from storage thing. And this also lets us place items on the wall much lower, or in places that we normally wouldn't. What I mean by that is, for example, let's just say you wanted a raised entry area, or like a little bit of a raised area over here, right? So you can place your loft here on the wall, right? It's orange, it works, but when you go down here, you cannot, right? It's purple again. So the way that we can get around this is if it's in storage, we can do the same trick that we just did to place these down, except it's a little different in that we can actually pick this one up. And then from here, we can figure out where we want it to go, even if it's in the purple. Open our display subcommand, place, confirm, or place escape, whichever one works best for you. And now we are able to place items much lower than they normally would, right? So this won't work. As I said, this has to be from storage because if I try this from inventory, we can't get to that same display subcommand menu. But if we have it from storage, there we go. We can place stuff in purple areas where we normally would not be able to. Okay, so that's placing from storage. Then we have the final thing, the final basic glitch, which is how to just freeze wall wall-mounted and tabletop items in place. This one's really simple. Take your tabletop item with counter surface placement enabled. You can place it down on top of a surface, such as a table. Same thing with the window. You can place the window on a loft or something like this. Okay. Now, how do we get this to freeze in place and unstick from these items? What we're going to do is we're going to turn counter surface placement off, pick up the item, and without putting it down anywhere, hit escape. The item should snap back into position. And then after it's snapped back into position, it is now disconnected from whatever surface it was on, and you can move the table away or the wall away. So I just did it there with the tabletop item. We're going to do it now with the wall item. Okay, so same thing. It's the wall item is in position where I want it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn counter surface placement off, pick up the item, hit escape. It'll snap back into position. And then I'm going to move my wall away. And now I have a floated lamp and a floated window. Okay. Beautiful. And that is all of the basic housing techniques. That right there, what we just covered, will get you very, very far and is probably your bread and butter tools for everything that you're going to need in housing. But now we are going to get into some more advanced uses of a lot of these, as well as some advanced layering techniques and stuff of that nature. So what we are going to do is, let me just see, where did I get that? Where is, maybe I didn't buy it. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Let me show you again, lesson plan. This is 201, housing 201. Okay, so now we recovered the basics. So right there where we left off is where we're gonna pick up cranes, okay? So something that I didn't talk about last time, and I realize is a perfect segue into these more advanced techniques, is the idea of craning items into position, okay? So here we go. Let us see what this means. Okay, so what I showed you initially here is you have a tabletop item and you can put it on a table, right? Actually, wait, first, really quick, let me just take a quick look here at the chat and make sure, does anybody here have any questions so far of what I've covered? No shame, just if you got any questions or if you wanted me to repeat something, or maybe if something was a little confusing to you throughout any of this tutorial, you know, feel free to voice it in chat and I'll try to address it or clarify, because you might not be the only one with the question. So don't worry, you don't need to raise your hand, just simply throw up a comment in the chat section. Glad you're excited for the under the stairs things, Liara. It's definitely a cool little thing that you can do only in houses, so I'm glad that we're gonna get to show that today. Okay, well yeah, like I said, if you guys have any questions or want clarification on anything, please just let me know there in the comments section. And I will try to read out the comments, since I understand that in a Twitch VOD situation or YouTube VOD, you won't be able to see what all the comments are, so I will try to make sure I read them out loud. Okay, so first things first, the crane thing. So, what do I mean by a crane? The most obvious way to put a tabletop item is you put it on a table. But you may want this lamp some really strange position, like way, way, way up in the ceiling. How do you do that? You can put it on top of a loft and then move the loft to get this item in position that you want it. So let's just say that I wanted little lights. I don't know. I wanted a light in the middle of my window here for whatever reason, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this Let's just see. I'm turning grid snap off here to get a little more precise control. Let's just say for some reason I wanted this look. I wanted a little light in the middle of my window, right? So what I'm going to do here is I have put the light on top of a loft, some sort of surface that it can stick to, a tabletop surface that is, and then I've moved it into position. I'm going to then do the disconnect trick that we just did, counter surface placement off, pick up the item, let it go, and then now move the thing away, okay? And then now we have the light floating in the middle of wherever we wanted it. So the reason that people start calling this a crane though, or that where the idea of craning something into position comes in, is people like to use the wall shelf, and you can use antique shelf too. This is either one. But this allows for a little bit more precise control, right? The wooden loft is a bit unruly and kind of giant, but this allows you to be pretty precise about where something is positioned and placed, right? And the crane part comes in when we get a wooden beam. So this is a crafted item, and it looks like this. Okay, simple wooden beam. And the crane thing comes in where we now put a stage panel. Let me clean this up for a second, just to make sure everybody's clear. We get a stage panel, we have a wooden beam, and now we attach our shelf to the wooden beam instead of the stage panel. And now we have a crane, right? We have our light, we can put it on the wall shelf, and then now we can actually move the wooden beam and position this light wherever we want it to go. So what we can do is, for example, this, right? Okay, see? Like that. And then we can do the same disconnect trick where we counter surface placement off, move the whole thing away. Ta-da! Now, why would you do this? As opposed to, I mean, you saw me do it earlier without putting the wooden loft and doing all that stuff. So this becomes really useful when you start doing more complex layering, because you might need to put this light in a really weird position behind a whole bunch of other items that you floated. And this is where you can use the crane to get into those positions. Or, for example, you may want to push something farther into the wall. And using the crane, you could really push something very far into the wall. A big thing about using tabletop and wall-mounted items is also that they snap to surfaces that they're quote-unquote meant to snap to. So the thing about this is, take a look, right? If I have a window, right, and if you remember, I had the stage panel about like here when I was creating, floating that window, right? If I put another wall surface too close to this window and I exit my housing menu, this window is actually going to snap back and reattach itself to the wall. It's kind of always looking to reattach itself, right? So if I was going like this, let's just see, like this, right? And I was craning or moving something into position over here, and then I exit the housing menu, oops, look what happened. My window snapped backwards. And this also happens with tabletop items where if I have that lamp floated there and it's going to stay in that position, but if for whatever reason I'm working on my house and I put a table below it and I exit the housing menu and I re-enter the housing menu, if it did not have a table surface below it that it already adhered to, it will now snap down to the table surface. So look what happened. I now have my table and a light stuck to it, floated in midair, which may, in some cases, be actually what you want. Sometimes this is very useful. For example, if I wanted to have some hidden recessed lighting, right? I might do a wooden loft ceiling like this. This is kind of like bleeding into custom ceilings. See what I'm doing here? So, which is, topic 3 there on our lesson plan. So here we go. It's stuck to the table, and I kind of want to hide this light, right? So instead of putting it on top of the loft, right, I might want to hide this. And what I'm going to do is move it here. See how it's hidden? It's not on top of the loft. It's not below the loft. It's somewhere inside, but it still emits the light. You see how it's dark over here, but it's light over here? So some people want this recessed lighting look. So this is an example of when you might actually want to have the item attached to some other surface. And then you can help put it in position. Right? But if this happens, whether it's by accident or intentional, and you can now no longer click on the light, right? When we were initially disconnecting the light from the table, we turned off counter surface placement, and then we picked up the light. So right now we cannot pick up the light. So how do we disconnect it from the table? Because right now it's still connected to the table. So if I wanted to get rid of the table, if I try to do this storeroom, see it'll say furnishing is attached here, cannot do it. How do we disconnect? What we're gonna do is place an item anywhere in the house. I'll turn up the lights just a bit so you can see everything. So to disconnect any item that's currently getting stuck, all you have to do is place any item. It could be a floor furnishing, it can be a wall furnishing, it doesn't matter. In our case, let's just do this potion rack, okay? I'm gonna put the potion rack on the ground floor. Now, having placed any item in the house, I'm now going to go into my housing menu, go to the placed items area, and find the item that I just placed. In this case, the potion rack. And I'm going to store or remove it. It doesn't matter which one. I'm gonna store this one. And now, the table is disconnected from the light. Let me turn the lights back down so you can see that the light is still there. Do you see that? The light is now there and it's disconnected from the table. This also works for the wall-mounted items. So right now, I showed that the window got snapped to the stage panel. So to disconnect this, if for some reason you could not grab a hold of this wall item, like, here's an example actually. Maybe a real-world example would be good about this. So for example, perhaps for whatever reason, you want to push an item way into the wall, right? And it's mostly hidden. So in the case of like a window, for example, the light beams maybe you want coming through a fake wall, right? So maybe you have it positioned here. You might put a window somewhere behind a fake wall, a fake wall meaning like did a bookcase. Or cupboards here. These are Oasis cupboards. I have a fake wall. Let's see, I crane my window into position here behind the fake wall. And I just want a little sliver of this coming through or something. This is just for example's sake. And for whatever reason, if I'm having trouble actually selecting this item, because perhaps you might have 20 other items in front of this, right, that are all getting muddled around and it's really hard to click through. In this case, I can click through, but sometimes you will find you cannot. So same thing, to disconnect it, let's just pop any item down on the ground. Here's a wood slat, put it down on the ground, find it in our placed items, store it, and now you can move away whatever was connected to it. And the window is frozen in place. I did not have to do the counter surface placement disconnect. Okay? So that is the use of a crane as well as the counter surface disconnecting idea. So something you may also hear people talk about is the idea of a mega crane, which is you can create a gigantic crane by sticking wood beams onto wood beams. So why would you do this? Sometimes you need to, for example, if you are floating in a large house, if any of you know what a large house looks like, or in some really big open space in a house, you may find yourself trying to reach an area that one wooden beam will not allow you to get to. What do I mean by that is, let's just say that I want to put a light floated in the middle of a large house, right? Like in the middle of the atrium area of a large house, like the entryway right above the big staircase, right? So how do I put an item floated sort of like way up in the middle there? I put this down, I put a wood beam, and I try to get my shelf as far out as I can, but that's as far as it'll go. What if I want to reach and put an item way out here though, for some reason, right? How can I do that? Here we get the mega crane. Okay, so I have a wooden beam, and now I'm going to attach a wooden beam to my wooden beam, right? So this might be useful. Sometimes if you're sticking something to the wall, you can put a window on here and then push it over to wherever you want it to go. But you can even do this, where you get a wooden beam attached to a wooden beam attached to a wooden beam. And now, do you see how it's way farther out than it was before? And you can pick this whole thing up and move it. So, and you can still do the wall shelf. And again, you can move the whole structure. So again, this may not apply to a lot of you if all you're doing is building in an apartment to start out. But as you start and I say that because an apartment is really not that big in the grand scheme of things, right? It's relatively easy to get to any position in the apartment. But once you start getting, building larger and larger builds and getting more crazy with what you're doing, you will inevitably come across some situation where you want to do this. So remember that you can attach wood beams to wood beams and get things into positions that you normally would not. It's also like a very nice maneuver, like ability to be very precise with where you're positioning stuff, because you can move any of these across any axis, right? So if I really precisely wanted to float my lantern here again, right? And it wants to be floated way out here, way out in the middle of somewhere, right? I can move the lantern along here. I can move this. I can move this, right? Like different axes of movement. And I can even do this, right? So for any of you who know that I build nightclubs as well, this was humongously useful when I was building my latest nightclub, Prominence Nightclub. So if you guys know what that is or have seen that, then this is a huge reason of how I was able to do a lot of the things I did inside Prominence. Because it's built, a large portion of it is built in that space within a large house. So another thing that people do with the mega crane idea is push stuff into the floor. So what do I mean by that? So if I wanted to take a wall-mounted item, or even a tabletop item, and I want to put it into the floor, without using any third-party plugins, mind you. Everything I'm teaching you in 101 and 201 here, there's no third-party plugins being used. This is all doable in the base game. Maybe I should have said that up front, but yes, everything here is doable in just the base game. You don't need any add-ons or anything. So if I want to push something into the floor, I'm a little bit limited in how I can do that, right? So if I was to try to put this, let's just say for some reason I wanted to have like a row of lights that run along just the bottom of the floor here, right? And for some reason, I really like the lighting of this particular kind of window, right? So I want to push this down because I don't want all the window. I just really want maybe like just this little circular bit, right? Let's just say perhaps I have, you know, a bar or something, right? Like, I don't know, I wanted like this. I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a little symbol of light, like right here, right? And I want just the top of this window. And I'm like, oh, I want to put it on the ground, but I can't. Okay, so how do we accomplish this? We can use the crane, right? So if we attach the window to, oops. If we attach our window to our wooden beam, and windows are a little weird where sometimes you need to place them from inventory or storage. But now if I put it on the wooden beam, right, and I push the wooden beam to the ground, I can get it lower than I was able to before, right? So, for example, right here, I was only able to get this far. Thing is, when you do the whole mega crane thing, you can start pushing things way, 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 way more into the ground, because you can do this, where you'll do a wooden beam, put the wooden beam, a second wooden beam as low as it can go on the first wooden beam, then put another one even lower, and then put another one even lower, right? So now do you see how this is way lower than before? And the whole thing can move at one time. And now if I place my window here, and I grab the whole thing and I push the whole thing into the ground, do you see how that works? And now look how low I was able to get this window. And the thing about this is you can do up to, I believe it's 7 or 8 different beams. It might be even more. So the maximum, there is a rule in housing where you cannot move 10 items or more that are stuck together. So I believe you could do 9 beams and then a window. I could be wrong. It might be 8 beams and a window. And if you have a wall shelf, that counts as an item, right? So right now, this structure that I have right here that I'm moving around, right, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. If I was to grab the stage panel, that's actually 6 items. Okay. So I can move this still together. But if I have too many items stuck to this, so that's 6, 7 with the loft, 8. Oops. 8, 9, and let me grab one more. 10. Okay. So these are, now this collection of items is 10 items. So if I try to move this, I think, oh, maybe it's one more. There we go. So I have more than 10 items on this thing, right? So now if I try to move this, do you see how it's all purple now? And I try to place it, it says you cannot move more than 10 furnishings at once, right? So with 10 furnishings, I could still do this and move it all around. So that could mean a whole bunch of wooden beams all attached to each other. But if I get more than that, I cannot do it. So there's a limit to how much you can mega crane. And yes, to answer your question, Selena, you can do this with floor items as well. So let me clean this up a bit. Okay. Just cleaning up our workspace here. So, yes, the answer to this is if I want to push some... oh, sorry, when you say floor items, I think you might mean tables. So tables are different. You cannot push ground items, so just like furnishings, into the ground. There's technically a way you can jump it down very slightly into the ground, but without using any plugins, I cannot, for example, take this bookshelf and throw it all the way into the floor. But I can do wall-mounted and tabletop items. So I showed you there with the window. If I wanted to also put a tabletop item way far into the ground, I could do that as well. So I'm going to do something very simple here. But so for example, that light that we used earlier, the glade light. Actually, here, I'll show you with a potion rack. Okay, so if I had a potion rack here, and for some reason I only wanted just these little bottles at the top, right, to be showing and the rest to be hidden. Maybe I want it to be like, right now it's my character's height, but perhaps I would like to use this as a living room side table, right? Like, so maybe I have like a custom television right here and I want a little table in front of the TV. But this is a little high to be a table, but so I want to push it into the ground. And I only want to show a couple of the potion bottles because maybe, hey, my character is a potion master. So what I can do is I can use our mega crane here, and I'll take our antique wall shelf, put the potion rack on top of the antique wall shelf. And now with the mega crane all together, I can push the potion rack into the floor, right? So like there, push it way into the floor, and now I have a little table height potion rack. Okay. And here we have an example, right? Where sometimes when you're pushing stuff into the floor and doing some of these crazy things, you might need to use either the disconnect technique, where we simply turn the counter surface placement off, then move stuff away. Or depending on what the item is and where you've positioned it in the ground or something, if you can't click it, again, place any item down. Let's do wooden steps here. Find it in the placed, store it, and once again, everything's disconnected. Okay. You do have to be a little bit careful with that thing I just showed, where you are placing a random item down and then disconnecting everything, because it doesn't just disconnect the last thing that you did, it disconnects everything that's stuck together. So what you just saw there, right, is, do you see how before when I was grabbing the wooden lofts, they were all stuck together, but now they're all separate, right? As I'm selecting them, they're all individually separate. It's because that technique that I just did, where you are placing a random item down and then putting it in storage, it disconnects every wall-mounted and tabletop item across the entire build until you exit from the housing menu to let them all snap back together. And then if you go back inside, they should all be stuck together again if you have not moved them away from a snappable position. There you go. But yeah, so there you go. Now you have like an item pushed into the floor, wall-mounted or tabletop, using the mega crane. Anybody have any questions on how that works? Did that make sense to everyone? Also, one moment, I'm gonna have a quick drink of water here. Okay, hello, I'm back. Has everyone been able to follow along so far? Hopefully. So I think now we are going to move on to our next topic, which we kind of touched on already, which is custom ceilings and bed meta. Oh, here, actually, really quick learning opportunity here, right? So you saw how I disconnected the potion rack from the antique wall shelf that I used to float it. So sometimes this will happen where as you're floating, you'll realize, oh no, my item is gone. Like it's completely gone, right? Where right now, technically placed underneath the floor here is actually the antique wall shelf. So just always remember, if for some reason you have an item that gets thrown out into some weird position in the build and you need to get it back, you can always just go to the housing menu and you can just return it to your storage, right? So I would recommend that, especially if you get really complicated with your builds, at the very end or near to the end of your build, as you're running low on your slots, try just taking a few minutes and going into your placed housing items list and scroll through it and just make sure that everything there makes sense. Because sometimes I've found that I'll be building something and, 200 steps in, and a couple weeks or months of building, I don't remember every single random wall shelf that I placed down. And sometimes I'll end up having 2 or 3 extra slots because I'll just have a random wall shelf, for example, that's just stuck somewhere that I can't see it. Or maybe it's like up in a back corner, like way over here or something. And I just forgot to disconnect it or remove it. So, little pro tip there. As you get more complicated with your builds, or really anytime you're getting near the end of a build, go scroll through your placed items and be cautious about this. You don't want to accidentally remove an item that you actually want, but it can be useful to take a look at those items and just make sure that they are in fact all the items that you really want and there isn't a random one that's eating up slots, because slots are very precious. So I'm going to store this. Okay. So now we go on to ceilings and bed meta. So we already started showing a bit of this, where we had a custom ceiling. And if you've never done a custom ceiling, it's going to eat up a lot of slots. I'll tell you that right up front. If you want to do custom floors or custom ceilings, it will eat a lot into your slot count. But I will tell you, from an interior design and immersion and sort of emotional, like a feel, like look and feel standpoint, just adding a simple custom ceiling or a custom floor, like custom levels to your floor, it adds so much to a build, because everybody who's into housing at all, even if it's from an RP perspective, knows sort of the shape and size of the box that you're given at default, whether it's a house or whether it's an apartment. But by adding a custom ceiling, it really can add a lot to change the whole look and feel of a build. So it's something that I highly recommend exploring if you've never explored doing this. And we're going to now talk about some of the basic concepts of how to do that. So probably like the most basic one that a lot of people will do is something like this. Just using a wooden loft, and you say, okay, maybe I want to come in the door and then I want a lofted area over here, right? So maybe you want a lofted area. No, here, I'm gonna use one of the techniques that we learned in our basic glitches thing. We're going to place escape. Okay, so here we go, display subcommand, place escape. There we go. So now, you see how it was purple? I wasn't technically allowed to place it on the window there, but using the placement from storage glitch, I was able to place this wooden loft from storage onto the wall. Okay, so maybe I want the wooden loft there to have a lofted area, or maybe I want it a little higher and I want to actually extend this and make it a custom ceiling. Okay, so now I say, oh, okay, I'm gonna have a wooden loft here. I'm gonna have one here, right? And it would start. We're starting to see here the custom ceiling coming together. So then, something though you're going to run into is, as you start, what if I want to cover this space up here, or maybe I just want my loft to extend outward farther. Something that seems a little strange to me, but whatever. It's just how they programmed it. Is you can't attach a loft to a loft naturally. So if I have this wooden loft, you need counter surface placement enabled. I could place this loft in the wall, but if I want to place it on the edge of this other loft, it's actually purple, and I cannot place this. But we can get around this, once again, through the place from storage, place escape. Display subcommand, and either confirm, or in my case, I like to do place escape. Confirm escape, rather. And now, we can start extending our fake ceiling outward. Right? So you see how this is coming together, we have a fake ceiling. And now, we can bring back in what I was doing earlier, which is we can take a light and we can put it in our custom ceiling. Okay, so we have a light. Maybe about there. Okay. And I say, underneath my custom ceiling here, what I want to do is I want to have a little light that illuminates stuff. Let's put it right there. And oh no, I can't see my light. We'll do our disconnect trick. place something down. Make sure we have the item. Ooh, I have a bunch of wooden beams, I realize. Here we go. Oh, there we go. Place the wooden beam, found it in the placed section, store it. And now I can grab this wall shelf, put it away, move these things all away. And I have a light hidden up in my ceiling. Okay. I'm going to turn the lights back down so you can see what that did again. Better. Right? If I turn it all the way down, you'll really see it. Oops. Okay. There we go. Ta-da! Okay. So now you can see this is coming together, right? We walk into the house, and if I started using more wooden lofts here, I could start really building out a custom ceiling here, as well as have some recessed lighting or illumination within the build. Right? That's looking real nice and clean. And from a basic standpoint, this works. Now, here is the thing though. As you are doing this technique, if you are using something like wooden lofts, right? This is going to be something you'll run into, and you may start realizing is, all this time I've had the camera looking upward, right? Now the thing is, you might not always have that be the case, right? So for example, you might be looking down at the TV or what have you, something down here, and then you walk under your custom ceiling and watch what's going to happen. Oh, look at that. I'm getting blocked because my camera can go through the wooden lofts. Okay. So this is something where some items in the game have camera collision where the camera cannot go through them, and other items do not have this. So for whatever reason, wooden lofts are one of the items that do not have this camera collision. And this can be really problematic if you want to hide what you have in your ceiling. So if for example, I was to extend this fake ceiling across all the way across and all the way across the entire build, it would be kind of annoying if I could never look upward unless I was zoomed all the way in like this. Or just to have to even deal with this, where you're running around and you see this, right? This is kind of frustrating. So how do we get around this? This is where the infamous bed meta comes in. So, I should say, first of all, actually, sometimes you may want this, right? Sometimes like you have the lofted situation where maybe you have, you actually want a little custom loft up here and you just want it to be open and exposed like this. You just want some stairs that maybe come up to it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a fake ceiling like this where the camera can go up here, right? But if you run into it where you are creating a fake ceiling and you do not want the camera to be able to go through the ceiling, we can do something called bed meta. So try this with me. Actually, let me first demonstrate what I mean by bed meta. Okay, so a bed. I literally mean bed. Right, so watch this. Right now, you saw what happened when I have the wooden lofts there, right? But if I have a bed, right? For simplicity's sake, just to illustrate the point, I'm gonna float the bed up over on the side here, just so you can see the difference. Okay. Okay, doing a basic float here. For I mentioned earlier that some items you don't actually need to hit the bottom of the item. Beds are one of those items. They can pop up really easily, so for beds, it's really easy to float them. You can, oops, okay, not that easy apparently. But you don't actually have to hit the very bottom. You can go like here, and the bed will pop way up. Okay. So I now have a bed that's floated up, right? Let me lock it in place. remember, rotate tool, lock, or click, unclick. It's now locked in place. I can move my stage panel away. Don't need that anymore for now. Okay, so now what I have is a bed floated up in the air and I have my custom ceiling. So watch what happens here though. As I'm walking, I have my camera all the way zoomed out, right? So if I'm walking, I have my camera all the way zoomed out and you can see here, I'm seeing above the loft, okay? But now watch what happens when I go underneath the bed, right? So I can walk under here. You're seeing all this loft stuff. I'm gonna go under the bed though here. From here, walk under the bed, watch what happens. Boom. You see how my camera snapped in like that? And now I'm scrolling outward on the scroll wheel and I cannot. And that is because the bed has camera collision. So see here, see it again? Camera all the way zoomed out. I can see above all these things, but as soon as, if I'm walking and I walk enough under the bed, the camera snaps down and it cannot move outward. I can move inward more, but the camera cannot go through the bed. This is bed meta. And the most common use of this, and the real main reason that people learn this is because when you're making custom ceilings and you want to block the camera, what you can do is you can put a whole bunch of beds up above your custom ceiling. Or the alternative is you make your custom ceiling out of beds. But I think that's not everybody likes necessarily the underside of the beds. If you like the underside of the beds and they match your build, you can actually full on build a custom ceiling using just the beds. But in our case, for example, we might want to have still this wooden panel, or wooden loft look, right? But we want to use the bed meta. So I'm gonna leave the bed there. And now, here it is before bed meta. I'm walking under my custom ceiling. Hello, friends, blah, 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 blah. Walking under, oh no, my camera is going through the wooden loft, right? Okay. Now, let me just shift these over here. And let me line this up so that it's just, so that the bed is actually hidden up in the ceiling, right? See, so do you see how if I align these, right, the loft is just a little bit lower than the bed itself, okay? And I'm gonna use place escape from storage to also get the second loft here. Here we go. So we have our custom ceiling built again, but now watch what happens when I'm walking underneath it. And look, you can't see the bed, right? So there's no bed visible. It looks visually, exactly the same as it did when it was over here. But this time, when I walk underneath it, remember how I could walk all the way underneath it and it would always show the top of the loft? But this time when I walk underneath it, bam, my camera is snapped down. Now, something to note is that the bed camera thing only really falls around the surface area of the bed itself, right? Which makes sense. So if, for example, I angle my camera up, you'll see that when I'm walking under the bed, it snaps down, right? So you can see I'm about to walk under the bed here. It'll snap down, but if I keep walking, we didn't put beds along the whole ceiling yet. So if I keep walking, it will eventually snap back up. So this is why it's like bed meta and why it's kind of becomes a bit of almost like a joke in itself, is because what people do is they then take a whole ton of beds and they layer it all along their entire ceiling to ensure that the camera never goes through their custom ceiling, right? So what does that look like? I'm going to show you. And so this is the nice thing about the bed meta too, is that you can do this with NPC vendor items. So if I go to the Hakonin and I go to beds, I use some Riviera beds there. So let's just get some more Riviera beds. I'll just get 4. Oops. Okay. So something to note with bed meta, the items need to be, they can be overlapping with each other, but they don't have to be. So for example, see how there's the space here? That's actually okay. I think this will be okay. This is actually one grid, like 2 grid snaps off. I think you could do up to 2 grid snaps. You might even be able to get it. Let's see. You can definitely do this. This will not show through, even though there's technically, you can see this space, but bed meta wise, this is not going to create any sort of a visible seam. I think you can even get away with this though. So let's try this. Just for argument's sake, let's try using this one a little bit closer just to make sure. Okay, so instead of 2 grid snaps off like these other ones, we're gonna add this one grid snap off. Okay. But basically, this would be like I wanted this look of the wooden lofts and I want to bed meta my ceiling. So here I'm laying down my beds, right? Grab my thing here. Let's flip these up. So this is where you start getting into some more complex layering where like right now I'm gonna kind of run into these wooden lofts. So this requires maybe a bit of forethought where you just need to kind of, if you have a bunch of layers that you're gonna do with your ceiling, you may need to think a little bit about putting the beds up above the ceiling and then putting in the false ceiling after. So it's just a matter of thinking through how logically you can place stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna just put these back in storeroom for now, just to get them out of the way. Okay. Yes, Selena, yeah. AKA kind of work your way down. And like that's a general good rule of thumb. But sometimes, you know, it's just also, sometimes, here, actually, I'll show you a little bit more of a different case where you might do something. Okay. So I have my beds all floated there. Right? And this is kind of what I meant where I left a gap, right, for showing you the bed meta thing, but you could see how this could easily be a custom ceiling in itself, right? Like I don't even necessarily need any lofts or rugs or some sort of other fake ceiling surface. This actually can work in certain types of builds, but it won't work for other types of builds. But this already is both a ceiling and a bed meta. So if I'm here, running around, camera all the way zoomed out, and I go underneath, bam. And see how I'm walking? Remember how I left those spaces? And yet my camera never snaps back upward. Right? Even though there is this gap here. This is a space saving thing. This is slot saving, right? Is you don't necessarily need the beds to all be touching each other, unless that's the look you're going for. But in terms of just saving a little bit of extra space and covering more square footage, the beds actually can have some separation. I think that's a little bit of a misconception when you start getting into bed meta, that some people think you need to have them absolutely butted up right next to each other, and that is not the case. Another small tidbit is not all beds are created equal, so not all beds will bed meta. So for an example, the Hingen beds, the normal ones that look like this one, the Hingen bed, right? This one does not bed meta for whatever reason. So the NPC, the base vendor ones like the Riviera, Oasis, and Glade, they will all bed meta, but this one will not. And once again, I'm going to shout out FFXIV and say that I believe it was probably Sint and maybe some other people who contributed, but on the FFXIV website / their Google Doc, they have a little section for bed meta, and they have a little diagram that shows which beds are able to be bed meted and which ones don't actually do that. Which ones have camera collision, which ones don't. So that's a very useful resource for you to book and or reference should you use the bed meta thing. So now that I have this bed, the bed's here, I could put my lofts back. And now, right, if this was my custom ceiling, I'd walk underneath and my camera is pushed all the way in. This is a bit of a low ceiling, so the camera's going to be pushed in quite a lot. But the nice thing is, if I had some other lights and stuff hanging down from here, maybe some windows and stuff, I won't see any of that, right? So for example, I might have, where's our, the cracked window that I used earlier? Is it here? There we go. Right, so for example, I might have something like this, because I just wanted a row of these and a bunch of like lighting up here. Right, this feels like a fairly standard scenario you might show up, right? So maybe I have a fake wall. Fake wall and some lights hidden like this, right? This would probably be pushed a little bit farther forward. It wouldn't be right way in back here, but you get what I'm talking about. And so this, I don't want to see the top of this though, right? Like the whole point is this thing is kind of hidden here. So if I didn't have the bed meta, my camera would poke through and I'd be able to see it over here. But because I have the bed meta thing, if this was to extend all the way out, it would just snap my camera down. Oh, sorry. The bed meta doesn't work when you're in the housing menu. That's why it's not showing. There we go. If I'm out of the housing menu, which all your guests will not be in the housing menu, presumably, then here we go. I'm walking, there we go. And I'm just inside someone's house. Look, I'm stuck down here. I'm trying to like look up and see the top of this light, and I can't. It's just all stuck in the ceiling. It's hidden. Okay. Ta-da! Okay. So something else, though, that you may want to do. Here is another very common pattern when you make a custom ceiling. I'm going to go over here to the rugs area, and I'm going to get flooring mats, okay? This is again from your Hakonen. This was just in the shelves, rugs, and lighting. So NPC vendor items, and a lot of people like this as their custom ceiling. So let's take some flooring mats. Okay, and I want to make a custom flooring mat ceiling, right? So let's just say I place these down. Okay. So now if I come over here and I want to use these as my custom ceiling, and then I want my beds up here, right? So first of all, I probably want to make sure that if I have my bed men in place, I've locked them all. So let's lock these. One, click twice, rotate tool, right? So I've clicked them. I can double check if I want. Okay, these are all locked in place. And now I'm ready to put the second part of my ceiling up. Okay. Flooring mats and rugs are another thing that snaps upward very nicely when you're lofting them. Okay. See, so here we go, where we might get this situation where we're snapping a whole bunch of stuff down, right? So this is like where I'm saying you might need to consider the order in which you do some of these things, right? So it was important that I locked the beds in place because now they're kind of getting out of position here because they snap down with the flooring mat as I'm trying to raise it. But because I already rotated them when they were all aligned up at the top, as long as I don't rotate them again, I will not create a new save state. And if I leave the house and come back, no matter where these beds end up, they will not, they will always just, they'll go back to being aligned because they were saved at that state. So I mentioned before a use case where it's not always top to bottom, and sometimes you're going to get complex layering and you're going to need to be moving some stuff around. One of the things you can do is, like in the case of this, right? I saved my beds at the save state along this axis, right? So what I can do, oops, let me get this flooring mat out of the way. Come on. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna put this back down on the ground. Okay, so let's show again, right? So I had the beds, they were all about that height, right? But what I can do actually, if I know I'm gonna float these flooring mats, this, as you get more complicated with ceilings or even just floating and layering multiple stuff, sometimes what is useful is you create a save state, so these things are all the height that I actually want them to end up being. But because I want to float the flooring mat and I don't want to deal with the beds, I can actually just push these a lot higher. Oops, a little too high there. Okay, I'm gonna push these way up and out of the way. Okay, so now the beds are like way out of the way, right? Now, as long as I don't rotate them, if I leave the house and I come back, they're gonna end up all in line again. But now I have a free working space where I can now float my flooring mat. Okay, so now I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna do my flooring mat float. Okay, change the angle of my camera just a little bit here so I can make sure that I'm getting it just where I want it. See, so right, is that about right? Okay, so if I wanted to be safe here maybe, right? I think like this might actually intersect with the little feet here. So what I might want to do is, right now it's grid snapping, right? So sometimes the easiest way to create everything uniform and all in line and flush with each other is you just use grid snap. Easy, just like how I laid these down, right? How did I get these all next to each other? Oh, easy, grid snap them right next to each other, right? And same thing here when I'm floating. If I'm snapping to grid snap, it'll all be okay, and they'll all be aligned. But let's just say for whatever reason, maybe you have a window, or just for whatever reason, right? Let's just give a little scenario here where you have like a window. Okay, so the thing is, maybe I'm being very precise and I say that I want the top of my ceiling to align with the little wood separation of the window right here, right? I don't want this little sliver. Do you see how right now my custom ceiling would allow a tiny little sliver of the window to show? Like this next segment of the window? And I don't want that. So what I actually want is I want it to be flush with this line, right? So what I might do is I turn off grid snap, right? Let's just make sure the window is actually, there we go. There you can see it, right? You see how this little bit is showing? Okay, so I don't want that. So what I might do is turn off grid snap, and now I'm going to try to precision float this thing down here, right? So it's kind of off from a grid snap, but now it aligns perfectly with that little, only showing the two segments, right? Ah, perfect, this is what I want. But now, okay, so if I start floating these other ones, right? I'm gonna run into this issue. Let me move the beds out of the way. Oops. Gosh. There we go. Okay. Okay, so my beds are out of the way. Okay, so now I have my flooring mats, but I have this sort of like custom off-grid snap flooring mat height, right? So when it comes to then I'm adding my next flooring mat, I'm gonna get to this problem where I'm not quite sure if they're aligned, right? Okay, so that's close, but do you see how they're not quite aligned, right? So like maybe I'm just I'm gonna try to nudge it. I'm gonna try to eyeball it. Like, okay, a little bit closer. You know, it's not quite aligned still, right? Do you see how this could be troublesome, where you're like, I already figured out the exact position of this one, and I really want to just make sure that every other mat that I have here, or whatever item you're using, is all matching to the exact same height? Okay, so here is a little trick that you can do to ensure that you match heights with anything. Okay, so this is going to require that you craft and or buy this item from the market board. At the moment though, these are actually quite cheap. You can use a wooden showcase or a potion rack. I highly recommend using a potion rack. For me, this was I think it was like 2,000 gil, like on the market board. It was like stupidly cheap. It might be a little bit more for you, I'm not really sure, but basically get yourself one of these. This is a good advanced housing kit toolkit item. Keep one of these around. The reason I like this is because it's got a nice flat surface here that's very understandable. Whereas the wooden showcase, do you see how it has this little like thing hanging out here? So technically the surface of this is like here, but it's a little bit harder to understand where that is. Like visually kind of see this, whereas this one is just nice and clean, the potion rack. So you'll see what I mean and why this matters in a moment here. But I highly recommend you use a potion rack. The important thing about these two items is that they have this flat surface that's sort of a tabletop surface, so they're a tabletop surface that's flat, and they are themselves a tabletop item. What this allows you to do is you take a shelf and you place the potion rack on the shelf, okay? And now you're going to use this item as your floating mechanism, okay? So what do I mean by that, right? So now, if we make sure that we know where the middle point of this flooring mat is, so it's right there, okay? So let's align to make sure that we hit just like any other float, we need to make sure we hit the middle of that. So, yeah, let's go a little bit like that. Okay, so now what's gonna happen is we're going to use this wall shelf, potion rack on the wall shelf, and we're going to get it positioned right where we want it to float to, because what's gonna happen is if we now use this as our floating surface, right? We can do our same float glitch as if we're using the loft, and it will float things up and down, but now it's snapping to the top of the potion rack. The difference though here is if I float using this method, right? Which now has me using this Riviera wall shelf as the height adjustment, right? So if I go like this, right? Oh, it's not quite right. Okay, let's nudge it down a little bit. Nudge, nudge, nudge. Okay. Take the potion rack back from inventory again. Here we go. Place escape. Okay. Now, there we go. We got our two segments and the floor. Let's just say that the floor thing is exactly where we want it. We have that little piece of wood at the top here. Beautiful. So here's the difference, right, between the wood and loft. When you're doing the wood and loft thing, if you're not using grid snapped, you kind of just have to put it back onto the wall every single time. And it would be hard to get it in the exact same position every single time. Using this, what you can do is you remove, I floated now my one flooring mat to where I want it. And now I'm going to remove the potion rack. I am not going to touch the Riviera wall shelf anymore though. And now this is going to be a standardized height. So now I can come over here, right? And get right about the middle here. And I haven't touched the Riviera wall shelf. I've only moved the stage panel itself. And I'm gonna use the potion rack. And I'm gonna snap it to the same height that the other one was. And now, if I move this away, they're perfectly level. So if you find that you have a custom ceiling and there's a whole bunch of this stuff, like a whole bunch of layers and stuff, and you need a bunch of things that are exactly pixel perfect, all flush with each other, use this technique. I'm gonna give a shout out to Sint because he is the first person that I saw do this. I don't know if 100% sure, I'm not 100% sure if he discovered this, but he's the one that I know as the champion of this technique where you're using this potion rack and or wooden showcase to flush all of these items together. So again, very, very useful, especially as you start to float many layers of items. So here we go. Now we got our custom ceiling. It's all flushed together. Let's lock it in place. Oops. I grabbed the window there accidentally. Okay, so I'm locking both my flooring mats, right? Perfectly flush using our potion rack. And I have not touched our beds. If you can see up above, our beds are still floating way up here out of the way. They were not in our way though while we were doing all that stuff with the potion, with the flooring mats, right? So do you see how it would have been really annoying to do all that floating we just did with these flooring mats if the beds were kind of in the way floating back and forth? But now what we can do, let's exit out of the building and come back inside. Right, so if you remember from our basic housing 101, the way that you sort of officially confirm lock something is you walk out of the building and you walk back inside. Remember that you had to rotate before you leave the building. So anything you didn't rotate has fallen to the ground, but anything you rotated, wherever you last rotated it, it is saved at that state, assuming that it hit the minimum float height requirement. So remember we didn't float this one, it's still on the ground, but now we have our custom ceiling with all of our beds in a row. They're all back in place. And, I guess I didn't show, but these flooring mats and the rugs, they don't bed meta, like they don't have camera collision, so you would be able to see through them, but because we have the beds, we have our custom ceiling, and now if I walk underneath, ba-boom. Camera snapped in. Oh man. Oh yeah, Liara, you were manually floating all of them. I know what you mean, because for a lot of my early housing journey, I was also manually floating everything and like getting them aligned. I would just be nudging. I would like turn grid snap off, turn my mouse sensitivity all the way down, and then like nudge the loft I was using by like 1 pixel at a time. Which, hey, by the way, this is a shout out to this thing, which is if you have a mouse with a sensitivity setting, something that's very useful is if you really need to precisely float and adjust something, right? It's a little hard to do that, especially if you have grid snap. But if you turn grid snap off, you can move it around. But if you have a mouse, like I happen to have the Razer Death Adder Elite gaming mouse, and I can turn my sensitivity way, way, way down. And then now I can, if I grab this item, I can really precisely move it, right? So make use of your gaming mouse or a DPI mouse dots per inch, or distance per inch, dots per inch, in this case, setting. This is very, very helpful because sometimes you might find that this is actually like a couple pixels maybe off or something from where you want it. So you can just go way in here, get really close, turn your mouse sensitivity all the way down, and then just nudge it up, you know, by like a pixel or two. Do you see how that's very, very subtle movement? Yeah, that can be very useful as you start getting more, wanting more precision and stuff with your builds. Like for example here, right? you can see it. If I actually look at this, it's a little off or something, you know, so I might need to adjust this. So I could adjust that. But yeah, there we go. You have your custom ceiling. If I could put the light back too if I wanted, and then I'd have light coming down from here. And yeah, there you go. That's sort of the basic idea about how do you make custom ceilings and you use bed meta. There are so many things you can do with this now. So go have an absolute blast. I'll just shout out, like, here's like another little freebie tidbit thing is, you know, custom ceiling with layering, right? So you can have like, this is kind of just like very, very flat right now. So something you might do is, for example, you take a partition. For example, the white partition here, right? And what you might do is you might float it upward. And then I'm gonna turn my UI off, and you could create there, like another breakpoint in the beam, or a breakpoint in the ceiling, right? So now you could imagine if I put a bunch of white partitions here and I ran them all along the ceiling, I could create structural support elements, because it might be a little bit strange to have a ceiling that's so completely smooth as you see with the flooring mats. So something that can add a lot of realism to your build is adding structural architectural elements that explain like how the ceiling is getting held up, right? And I think like even if people don't necessarily consciously register this, our sort of brains are very good at kind of like subtly understanding how our world is built around us, right? Like little things inform how our understanding of the world. And so adding these kinds of like structural elements can really help add a lot of immersive realism to your builds. So something to think about as you build your custom ceilings. Oh man, we are getting a little short here on time, but I'm gonna try to get through the rest of these things. I think that was a big section, but these next couple ones are hopefully not, I think they're a little bit, they're gonna be a little bit quicker. Okay, so there we go, bed meta. Our next item on our lesson plan is hidden NPCs and mannequins. So what does this mean? Okay, so with hidden NPCs and mannequins, we're utilizing, basically, this is the NPC, these are housing NPCs, these are actual like vendors, right, which we've been buying stuff from. And then there's mannequins, which, like, take a look at this. Oh, how is this gun floating on this wall? Spoilers, it's a mannequin. Okay. So obviously these items, the NPC vendors and the mannequins can be used as they sort of originally were used or intended, which is, this is a vendor and this is like a mannequin where you could display something and you could deck this guy out in armor and display your coolest weapons and have him do different poses. Very cool. What people do in the housing scene though is they utilize these in a few other ways that you may not initially know about. So one of them is for the NPCs. You can hold open doors that automatically open by putting an NPC near the door, okay? So what does that mean? Are these buyable? I'm gonna quickly go buy something here. So what I mean by this is, in the game, right, in housing, there are items that have like an automatic door opening and closing mechanism. This also, I believe, works for outside as well. Like with the new the gate that swings open and closed. It's a very similar mechanism to the new bookshelf, the hidden bookshelf, where the hidden bookshelf opens and closes. So in this case, though, I'm going to show you using paper partition. Ooh, it's a little pricey. Whatever, it's fine. For the sake of this, we'll go quick. Okay, so Actually, you know what? Let me just buy a door too. I might as well just actually buy a door as well. Just to show this off a little better. Okay. Ugh. Prices, whatever. Oh! Hey, Ray! Hello, hello. That's my friend Ray, everybody. Super awesome guy. It's very helpful. So... Alright. Where was I? Here we go. So, partitions. Partitions or doors. Okay, so let's just say I don't like the door that it comes with the house, and I want to have this door, right? Or something like that. And so if I come near the door, it swings open, right? Oh. Yeah, so come near the door, it swings open. Come back, it's right, and it's automatic. This automatically happens. Okay, so what happens though if I just want the door to just be open, right? Like I don't want it to always be opening and closing, or you won't be able to hear this, but in the case of like a paper partition, if you go in the game and you do this you can do this in the housing preview, or if you happen to have one of these, then you probably know that this door opening closing has a sliding sound where it goes shh, shh, and it's opening and closing. So every time someone walks by this door, it's gonna do this shh, shh sound. And if you have a whole bunch of these that you're using, this can get really annoying. Or simply, maybe you want this little window to be open and you want to be able to see through it. Okay, but there is no option to toggle this open or closed state. It only happens when you're near the door. However, we can use housing NPCs near the door, and okay, this you won't show when you're in the housing menu, but if I'm close the housing menu, the door will stay open because technically this is a person as far as the game is concerned, and it registers as a person and will now keep the door open. Same thing goes for the fake door over here, right? I think for this one, the hitbox is actually a little bit over on this side of the door, so it might need to be a little bit closer. But there you go. See, there you go. So now the door would stay open. If I wanted both open, I could use both housing NPCs. And there we go. Both doors are automatically open. See, I can go way over here and the doors stay open. Very, very useful. Right? And the nice thing about this too is you don't have to see the NPC. So, for example, I could put the NPC here. Oh, sorry, they're not quite close enough. This is, requires a little bit of trial and error. But you could do something like this. Really? I guess the hitbox on this is a little weird. You have to figure out where you need to be able to where you need to stand in order to get to these people. Sorry, in order to trigger the door opening and closing. I apologize that that door is kind of tripping me up a little bit because of the weird hitbox that it is there. So maybe you have it, Let me grab the NPC again. Okay. Dang it, still not, okay. You'd have to play around with the position that they could go, but for example, you could put them here, right? Or, here's another idea. You can even do, like, let's just say you created a little fake door, right? For whatever reason. So maybe I do, one moment. Okay, here, I'm gonna use this. right? Okay, so let's just say that I had this, right? And I had this fake door. Oh, okay, I want to hide this a little bit. Need to put this a little bit higher. Okay, so let's just say I was making a custom door, right? And it was a Lalafell door, right? Or maybe this is for like a minion house or something like that, you know? And I wanted to have the door stay open though. I just want this little cutout. Maybe it's like a doggy door even, I don't know, whatever you want to think about, right? So what I could do is take this, the Hakonin, right? And obviously I could put them in front of the door and it would stay open, right? So there you go, the door would stay open. But what we can do instead is change this to a Lalafell, and then it'll hide itself in the floor. So change, so taking the permanent away, putting it in storage, and then putting it back down lets you choose the race again. We'll choose Lalafell this time, right? I'll just choose male Lalafell. There we go. Oh, look at the little guy. Okay, there we go. Or young man, whatever, you know. And then here we go. I'm gonna put it right here in front of the door. But when I close the menu, he's gone. And yet the door is open, right? So now if you can imagine that there was a whole fake floor, right? Like maybe I had a bunch of troop stages, or if I had a whole bunch of lofts or whatever, I could be standing here walking around and there's just a door that's open. And you have to play around a little bit with like hiding, getting the name to be hidden. Because unfortunately you cannot take away the names, but basically that's invisible, you know? You see how that works? And same thing here, right? If you were to have, you know, this as your entryway, you could have this guy hidden behind here, and then it would just look like the door is open, right? Maybe there's the... Let me show that in practice. Okay, so I say, oh, there's a... Right, we have our... Here we go. This one I know has a much bigger box. There we go. Oh, he's big. There we go. That should hide him. There we go. Okay, so now I walk away, and now you see both things are just held open. Ta-da! That's using NPC vendors to hold open doors. Okay, mannequins. So the short and skinny about the mannequins is you can dress them up with armor or weapons of any, whatever you have, right? So you can show off your coolest armor, your coolest weapons. But what some people like to do is take this a step further, and they want to show off just the weapon, right? So here what we have a mannequin that has this gun, right? So I look at my mannequin here. Oh, there's my retainer. And I have select gear to display, and all I have is this augmented lawman, right? Which is the Shadowbringer's relic gun for machinist. Okay, so then I've set different the mannequins can take on different races and different poses, but for the sake of not having a Mikote's tail hanging out, or like horns, or like you know, Mikote ears and stuff popping out. It's when you're doing this kind of technique, it's best to just go with a pure humanoid looking race. So Hyur or Ro is probably like a good go-to. And then if you set them in other poses, the gun may not be sitting in quite the way you want it to. So for example, if I change a pose, maybe that's the position I want the gun, but maybe it's not. Right, like in this case, oh, it's kind of out of position now. I don't know, right? In my case, I think the runway thing is nice and has the right angle with the gun and everything. This is what I want. I'll leave it like that. Okay? And now that I have the gun in the position that I want it, if I take a wall, and for example, I put this like that, and I hide the mannequin, boom, there's the gun on the wall, right? And so you could make like a weapon armory display like this, right? Where you display like 5 of your coolest machinist guns or something, and you can make like a gun store or like a, you know, I don't know, arms mafia base or something. So if you've ever seen people utilizing armor in their builds, whether it be helmets or guns or, you know, weapons, or even like just the arms, like I know Oat Milk did a really awesome cyberpunk build where she took the Shadowbringer's PvP gear, which looks like cyberpunky robot arms, and she did a whole bunch of mannequins next to each other where just the arm was sticking out, and it looked like a store that was selling robotic limbs. Super duper cool use of this. And take this one step further, you can, this shows your retainer's name, and other players will see this in the build. And so you can actually get fun with this, right? So you could actually name this like God's gun, or like whatever you may do, right? Like, I mean, you could say like you know, yeah, I mean, you could call this something crazy, right? Or you could just name it, make it a joke. It could be a meme. So sometimes people put like a meme name here, or you could, you know, explain what it is. So maybe there's like a, you know, it's like a hatchet or something like that, and it's like, you know, official use or something like that, is you name it, right? So it looks like, oh, it's for like official use only, and it's a safety hatchet on the wall, right? So whatever you want to name it, you can use your retainer to name the object here. Alternatively, there are ways where, like, if you were to create a fake ceiling or something here, right, you can actually hide the name a bit, right? So do you see out there, like, if I was to have this gun floated in just the right place, I could potentially hide the name so that you can't actually see it from a player perspective. Now it just looks like a gun is hanging on the wall, right? And so, yeah, there you go. That's how you would put a gun mounted on the wall. And I will show you also a little combo I thought of that will combine what we did earlier. So let's take a look at this. So here's an idea for you, right? So you have the gun hanging on the wall, but that looks a little weird hanging out in the middle of nowhere. So what you could do instead is take the new Ironworks toolset, and this already's got a lot of tools, but if we use the back of this, it has no tools, right? So you see where I'm going with this? Okay, let's line that up. Okay. Let's take the back. I'm gonna turn grid snap on so I can get it nice and straight here. And now let's turn grid snap off and get this right about there, maybe. There we go. Okay. Right, let's get it like maybe about. Okay, maybe about there. Okay. And now we're going to do our disconnect thing, right? Where we have toggle surface placement off. Disconnect this, move this away. And voila. There we go. A gun mounted on the wall, right? And then you could easily have a desk in front of this. So, right, I mean, you could imagine someone having like this or something, right? And then, or whatever you wanted, like a workbench or something. I don't know if there's, what is there, like a good desk, workbench? Right? One of these kinds of things, right? Like this, right? So you can imagine, okay, I'm gonna close the housing menu. You can put the two together in your brain, right? Here we go. I have my thing and I have my prized weapon here on the wall right there, right? And in case anyone's wondering too, like earlier you saw the window snap, so, and this is also a wall-mounted item. So this is not going to snap because it's backwards. So when I showed you earlier that the window, this window, right, was, if I disconnect this, right, see how it's disconnected? Okay, it's not going to snap, it's floating in midair. If I bring it close, it snaps to the stage panel, but it's only the one side that snaps, right? So if I disconnect this again, and instead the stage panel is facing the opposite direction, right? Which is similar to how we have this thing flipped around, right? See how there's this space? You'd think it might snap, but in fact, it will not, right? So this is another key thing. If you're layering objects, especially wall-mounted ones, if you flip them around and you use something like stage panels or something as your walls, you can get them to float there and they won't snap to anything. Okay? One last tidbit about the mannequin is you'll notice that I have it standing on a table. So that is because you can float mannequins up the same way you float other things. You just have to float them very slowly, so you can only float them each increment of floating upward. You have to just hit their feet pretty much. So you can imagine that's, I mean, this is like probably like 10 different little floats just to get it up this far off the ground. So it's very similar to floating a stage panel where you have to do this. So watch if I'm floating the stage panel. Oh, that floated the wrong one. Because I'm hitting the, not hitting the midpoint. There we go. Needs to be a little bit farther forward. Okay, so there you go. You see how it's floating up only a bit? Stage panels are one of the hardest items to float because you can only float them. Do you see how that, I couldn't even float it that much. That was too much. So mannequins are similar to this, where you really just need to be very patient. I'm trying to go too fast here. But you just need to do this. Barely touch it. Okay. You see how it is floating upward? Okay. So now you can see that the stage panel is floated a bit off the ground. This is the same thing that you'd have to do for the mannequin. You just have to only basically contact with its heels and you'd float it up little by little each time. But the important thing is that the mannequin will snap back to the floor unless you give it a tabletop surface to stand on. Okay? So wherever you need it to be, float it to that height, and then you need a tabletop surface for it to stand on. In this case, I just used an actual table, but you can, I believe what you can also use is a zabuton cushion. So if you go to that Hakonen that you have, your NPC vendor, and go to, I think it's Other, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. This zabuton cushion, it's only 2,000 gil. And the thing about this one is it has got a collision surface, right? So what I mean by that is it actually allows you to like stand on top of it. You see that? How I'm standing on this cushion? And because it's a tabletop item and it's so thin, it's really easy to hide and it's really easy to position anywhere you want it. So if I take this away, the table away, I believe if I leave the house and come back, this thing's going to fall to the ground. But what I need to have is, I just need something for it to stand on. And you can just use a cushion like this and go like that, okay? And then disconnect it. Bada boom, the retainer will stay in place as long as you rotate it. I realize I did not show you that. So just like anything, after you float it up to the height that you want it, you got to lock it in place. And then you got to put a thing underneath it. And when you first do this, oh, there we go. See, the retainer will appear to not actually be floated. So when you, after you float it, you can see when you enter the housing menu, you'll see where its actual position is. But if you leave the housing menu, you might think, oh no, it's not actually floating. But as long as you enter the housing menu and you see it floated up and you rotate it in place and you have a surface beneath it, if I leave, so look, it's on the floor. If I leave and I come back, it should appear floated up. There we go. Ray again cheering. Okay. Going back to the apartment. And if I did this correctly, there it is. The mannequin is still floated up and it's standing on this tabletop surface. And because that is so small, it would be really, really easy to hide it with anything, right? So like, just go like this. Bada boom. There we go. And now it looks like, you know, this is if you wanted your retainer actually just floating and you wanted to actually see the... sorry, I'm saying retainer. If you wanted the mannequin floated up and you wanted to... I think this works for housing NPCs too, by the way. So mannequin or housing NPCs. If you wanted them floated up, right, and look like they're standing on something, you can do this. And in this case, I think because it's a wooden loft, this actually would count as a tabletop surface. But if for some reason you were making a custom wall or something, let's just say randomly you wanted them to be standing on this, right? Or what do we have earlier? Where's the Oasis stuff? These ones, right? So these technically, I don't think they have a tabletop surface here. So you would need to have a cushion right here if you wanted, for example, your mannequin to be standing up on here as a display or something. Okay? But that's the basics of mannequins. And it's all about your creativity, using hiding NPCs or using the mannequins and floating them up and getting creative with this. So remember, this works for showing weapons like this, but also you could show armor. So I know Dividus from FFXIV, I believe it was Dividus, he did like an Ish Guardian build like way, way long ago, where he put the Dragoon helmet, or like the Dragoon relic armor on a mannequin, and then he just floated it up so that only the head was showing, and then he put it like on what looked like a side table. And so it looked like a helmet, like a blank helmet was just standing on the table. Really, really cool use of that. And some people also like to use the, what is it? The crafting gear. Because, for example, Culinarian has frying pans. So you could, in your kitchen, have custom frying pans or something hanging on the walls if you wanted to do that. So yeah, go crazy, get creative with that. That's how you do the mannequins and the NPCs. Okay, so now for the final two little tidbits here of this tutorial, I'm going to go over to a house. In this case, it's going to be my free company house. Oh, really quick first though, let me... if you have not already, and if you're gonna try this along with me, grab 2 beds. You can just get 2 of the Oasis, Riviera, or Glade beds from your housing vendor, your Hokonen. So in this case, I'm just going to grab these 2 beds and bring them with me. You're going to need them. Okay. And in fact, if you want to follow along, grab your toolkit as well in general. Like grab your stage panel, grab your wall shelf, whatever one you want to use. And then make sure you have a loft, whether it be the wooden, the round one, or the square one, okay? So you need a loft, a wall shelf, a stage panel, and 2 beds. And probably like an item that you want to float, because we're going to show how to float from somewhere below. So something easy to float, you can just take like a cabinet or something, right? So I'm going to bring this with me. Okay. So now let's go over to the house. So this next part is for any of you who have a house, whether it be a cottage, a house, which is a medium, or a mansion, small, medium, large house, because we're going to show how you can do some things in a house that you cannot do in an apartment. Okay, so now I'm gonna go inside this house. This is my FC house. And in case you want to see a better look at some of the stuff inside this FC house, I have posted screenshots of this on my Twitter, which you can find linked below. So, yeah, look, this is the inside of the FC house. It's all built out, but for the sake of what we're gonna do, we're just gonna go in the basement and show you some stuff. But this is kind of all the stuff that I was talking about. Look at the ceiling here. Let me turn up the lights so you can see. But I'm just going to quickly point out a few things, what we talked about and how they're being used. See the ceiling? That's beds. This is beds. Bed, 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 bed. Then a partition here to give a little bit of a coverage, because for these double feather beds, there's some pillows that you can see coming through if you don't cover it. So I covered it with a partition. Right? Here's some complex layering going on, right? There's like 3 different items here creating these wooden metal bits and a whole bunch of other items all lined along here to create a custom overhang above the bar, right? So you can see how this build uses a lot of multi-layering and a custom ceiling, because if you notice, as we came in, there's a tiny little bit here that's not quite bed meted, but like everything else in here, if I run around, it's all bed meted. The camera will stay stuck into this space. Okay? Okay, so now, here's what we're going to show you though. I'm going to go into the basement. Oh, here, you know what? This is actually a good opportunity to also demonstrate something else. When you are learning how to build housing and when you just get more into it, even visiting people's houses, honestly, this is useful. If you ever get stuck somewhere, you can always ghost out of somewhere or go through items if you need to by finding what I call a catch point. So what I mean by that is right now, if I run into this wall, I'm stuck. I can't go forward, right? If for some reason though you're in some build and you need to get behind somewhere, including your own build, or maybe someone else's, or you get stuck somewhere, if you need to go through the wall, you just need to make sure you can find a point where your character stops moving. So you see how if I'm walking along here, sorry, this is a bad example. If I walk along here, my character's still moving. I'm hitting the wall, but my character's still kind of moving along the wall. But if I keep moving until my character freezes and I continue moving forward, my character will turn into sort of ghost mode, and everything in the immediate area right around me, I can walk right through. So for example, if you needed to see into a basement or something like that, or you were stuck somewhere, I know the stairs are right here. I could find a catch point and then walk right through. Okay, and this should work for pretty much everything. If you ever get like super stuck, I know that I'm having a little trouble here on the PlayStation. You can also always open your housing menu, move to front door, like a last resort. That will also just put you back outside, or not outside, but it'll put you back near the front door. Okay. Okay. Now here we go. We're gonna go in the basement. And you can see I already have some stuff floated up in the basement here. But now, so how do we get underneath the stairs? So this works for this part of the staircase as well as the stairs in the middle of the house as well. Okay, so sometimes you are going to want to build stuff underneath the staircase and push it up through the stairs to maybe have a little bit of it poking up, like let's just say over here or something. There's various reasons why you'll do this, and I'm sure as you start building more, you'll start seeing what those might be. But how do you get underneath the stairs? So what you're going to do is we're going to place from storage the bed. So we need to take our bed. In fact, I would take both beds and put them in storage. You need ideally 2 of them for this, but you can do this with 1, but it's easiest if you just do it with 2. So what you're going to do is, remember how we did the place from storage to get something really close to the wall? Okay, so if I try to place a bed down, where is my bed? Search is your friend. Make sure you're not pulling items from somewhere else. Make sure you're using this from storeroom. Okay, so here we go. We got a bed. If I try to place it close to the wall, I can't get that close because of the whole purple thing, right? But if I turn on, I usually like turn on run so I can get really precise about my movements here. And I play around with angling my camera and moving my character around. I can, hold on, there we go. I can get a bed very close to the wall. Okay, do I see how that's really close to the wall? About as close as I can get it. Okay. So there we go. And then we're gonna confirm from storage, right? The display subcommand, confirm. Okay, so now the bed is really close to the wall. And what I'm gonna do is rotate the bed so it's sort of sticking into the wall. And then I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna doze on the bed. Okay, now you see I just did /doze. I guess you can't see my chat, but I just typed /doze, D-O-Z-E. And now I'm sleeping on the bed and I'm kind of half in the wall, half out the wall, and I can see underneath the stairs. So now from here, I can get up into the stairs, right? And now I'm underneath the stairs. You see how that worked out? I'll do that again. Let me just pop up here above the stairs again. So normally you cannot run through the stairs. You can't get under here. Even if you do the ghosting thing I just talked about, you can ghost through the objects, but you can't get through the stairs. But I'll show this again, right? So we're going to take a bed, make sure it's in our storeroom, right? And we're going to, you're gonna have to like move your camera a little bit and move your character a bit until you get this just right. Get the bed as close to the wall as you can before it gives you the little error. See, unable to place item. This is where just nudging it a little bit more. Okay, close enough. Right, you can angle your camera a touch just to maybe get it a little closer. There we go. Okay, and get it placed there using placement storage or place from storage glitch. Exit the housing menu. Oh, actually, sorry. Before you exit the housing menu, try rotating the bed so that like the headboard, the pillow is like sticking into the wall. I find this helps to make sure your character can really get underneath there. Stand on top of the bed, type /doze. Your character should fall asleep and kind of be pushed into the staircase here. And then you're just going to walk forward off the bed underneath the stairs. There's a chance that you may not immediately just be underneath the stairs, in which case you may need to, from the position on the bed, wherever you might be kind of stuck in the wall here, and you're gonna wanna put the second bed down. Whether it's from the position stuck in the wall or if you actually got underneath the stairs like this, the reason I have this second bed here and why I told you to bring a second bed is because I'll show you. This is the bed we used to get underneath the stairs. That bed was already there because I already did this a while ago. But, you know, not right underneath the bottom here, but just a little bit inside. Put down a second bed, right? Hopefully you grabbed a second bed. Okay. And you might need to use the place from storage again to position your items underneath here. So I'm using the whole place from storage subcommand thing. So I'm gonna go here, place from storage. Okay, and now I have this second bed here. The reason I want this here is because I can now store this, leave this second bed. You can just rotate it so it's nice and hidden. I kind of like to maybe do it like this. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so now if I pop out from underneath the steps, there is no sign of any beds or anything, but if I stand here, you're gonna need to play around with this a little bit because the height for this is a little bit tricky to figure out. You might think you need to be really close, but in fact, you can doze and get onto your bed from on top of the stairs. Do you guys see that? Okay, so do you see what I said? We're like, I know the bed is like right about here or so, and so you're gonna end up going higher on the staircase than you think. You think like you could trigger the doze from here, but actually you go like way up here. Remember, my bed is hidden underneath here, and if I do a /doze, my character will pop down and doze on the bed through the stairs. And this way you can quickly get in and out from underneath the staircase once you have this bed in place. So for example, if you have a really complex build and you're using a ton of stuff with the stairs, you place the bed once, leave it there, and then anytime you need to get underneath the stairs, you simply doze and you'll pop back down there. Just remember to get the bed out at the very end if you still need an extra slot. And that's how you get underneath the stairs. I also want to point out that on, I believe it's small houses, there is a void area that you may need to build around. And unfortunately, you cannot place items into the void. Thankfully, on larges and mediums, you don't really have this void. But on smalls, there is a void, like a blacked out area that you will run into if you go beneath the stairs. And you're just gonna need to build around that. You can do some stuff with the crane that we talked about earlier to position some like wall mounted or tabletop items, but you may need to think and plan accordingly where you will not be able to drop items into that void area. Something to be aware of. It's a design challenge. And JJ, welcome to the stream. I see you're saying, oh no, you're late and you probably missed most of it. So yes, you did miss the live version of most of it, but I just want to let you know that the entire stream, both Housing 101 that I did on Monday, as well as this Housing 201, will both be up on my YouTube channel, which you can find linked below here in my Twitch panels and in my Twitch description. I am just getting up and running with my YouTube channel, but both of the streams will be posted there in full, and you can already see actually Housing 101 I have uploaded there, and I have timestamped all the different segments of the stream. So I will be doing the same thing for this one as well. So don't worry for anybody who is either joining us late, or if you missed it, or if you view this in the future, go check it out on my YouTube channel. You might already be watching this on my YouTube channel as you're hearing me say this, but at the time of recording this, we're here live on Twitch. And so if you want to show any of your friends or anything, I'm going to do my best to get this uploaded tonight, if not first thing tomorrow, over to YouTube. So that way you can have the whole Housing 101, Housing 201 all ready to go for yourself and for your friends. So don't worry if you missed it. You can always go back and check it out. And go at your own pace too. You can always go back to, repeat a bunch of sections if you need to. Okay, so that was getting underneath the stairs of a house. The final thing we're going to talk about is floating from below. And what I mean by that is when you have a house, you have multiple floors. And something that you can do then, therefore, in a house that you cannot do in an apartment without third-party tools, which we're not going to get into that. This is all in the base game, is you can push stuff from the basement area up into the other floors. So if you happen to have 3 floors, you can do this on the basement and the middle floor. Or if you have a small and you only have a basement and no 3rd floor, then you can do it from the basement. But here you go. You can see me having pushed stuff up from the floor so that you will only see a fragment of the item above. This is a big treat once you get to actually acquiring the ability to build in a house, because this offers a ton of possibility and creative thinking and stuff. So in particular, what I'm going to show is sort of just a quick overview of how you do this, as well as a little trick to get this, make it a little easier for yourself. So for the sake of this, first of all, the easiest thing to show you is just how do you push an item up through the floor. And that is very straightforward. It's exactly the same. It's actually what you would imagine, which is just that you put the item down, right? And we do our basic float, just like we did before. Right, and we're just gonna float this up like we normally would, except obviously I need to hit the bottom of the item. There we go. I'm trying to go a little too fast here. Okay. So I'd float this item up and up and up, right? And I keep pushing it up and up and up. Eventually the item, if I keep pushing it up, it'll go push through the floor and you'd only see the top bit of the item, okay? And that, there's nothing special you need to do with that. It's just wherever this thing is positioned, like vertically in like XY axis, right? It's gonna be stopped. Let me rephrase this. Basically, the key thing here is you need to figure out where you need to place the item so that as you push it straight upward, it's going to be XY axis wise, it's going to be in the correct position that you want it. So something that's very useful is laying the whole thing out, for example, on the bottom floor, and then pushing the whole thing up all at once. So for example, this is how the counter of my bar is built, right? And I laid all of these cabinets out on the bottom floor here, and then I push them all upward through the floor so you only see the tops, and the result looks like this. Do you see that? So this is just the tops of a bunch of hanging bookshelves, I believe it is. And so in order to make sure that these were all going to line up and be, you know, positioned correctly as far as like creating this little space where the person can stand, I laid the whole thing below and then pushed the whole thing up all at once. So same thing here too. Do you see the trees here? I didn't want to show the whole trees because the ceiling is very low. And so I pushed them up through the ground. Okay. So here is a little trick though for doing this. I said that the most important part of this is that you need to have these things aligned on an X and Y axis in order to make sure they go up through the floor properly. So the best way to do this, there are two ways. One is use your way markers. So if you go into your actions, hit P, I think it's P by default on your keyboard, and you can go into, is it, hold on, where are they? Party. Okay, so you're gonna go to hit P on your keyboard or get to the actions and traits menu, then go to main commands, and then go to party. And if you've never used these, there's a bunch of little party tools and stuff, one of which is waymarks, right? And so if you activate the waymarker thing, you can get these different waymarkers, right? And the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are squares, and the number A, B, C, D are circles. So do you see how if I pick up a waymarker, it creates a circle on the ground, okay? I can click again to turn it off. So I can also use this one, it shows a circle here with the number 1, but if I place it down, it's actually a square, okay? So this is useful because you can see the way markers through the floor. So for example, if I wanted to line up a bookshelf right here to this edge, right? So see how like there's an edge that's getting formed. Let's just say for some reason I needed a partial bookshelf to show up only right here, right? What I can do is I can mark this down with a way marker. Let me close this menu. Okay. Okay, so see how now I have this little corner, right? I can see how this way marker roughly lines up where I want the bookshelf to go, right? So now what I can do is actually, if I go below, I look up, aha, there's the way marker, right? And now I know that I need to put my bookshelf aligned to this corner. Okay, so now if I take my stage panel and I line it up to that way marker, let me get this off here. Okay, so now if I just switch to turn off grid snap and I'll line this up. Sorry, it's a little tricky to maneuver here. Oof. There we go. Okay, so now I know, right, that this corner matches with this. So now what I could do is I could take, let's just say my shelf here, and align it like this to the stage panel. And now if I push this up to the floor, it should be exactly in the position that we expect it to be in. Alternatively, another way you can do this is actually if you have a window or set of bathroom tiles. Let me see if I actually have that in here. There we go. So this works with both a window or a set of bathroom tiles. I personally like to use bathroom tiles. Right? So I'm gonna take this to my inventory. So same thing here we did with the way marker, right? You can also do, let me show you. Come on. Okay, so if I go back up, okay, so see where I have the way marker? So we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna just use some bathroom tiles instead. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna put my stage panel, right? Let's just put it right there, okay? So let's just say I wanted to mark the same spot. You can use the way marker, or you can also do this. You can use the bathroom tiles, or again, a window, a wall-mounted item that's like very tall, and that allows you to put it really low. So I'm gonna go here, as low as I can, like that. Okay. And I can, if I want to get it more precise, I could always go very precise here, right? But now again, I have this sort of edge. And now, if I was to go below, do you see how I have the way marker there, but I also have the bathroom tile sticking down. So this is just another way where you can measure something out and figure out how to align stuff from below. Okay? And then let me show you, I can always disconnect this, disconnect the bathroom tiles if, for example, I need this stage panel. Oh my god. Getting a little lost here, there we go. Okay, so now I come back below, align my stage panel back to wherever I put that thing. Oh my goodness, it's being a little unruly. Is that close enough? There we go, that's close enough, okay. I could be more precise, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm gonna put it right there. So I could line up my bookshelf again, whatever I need to float. And then I'd simply do my float. Okay, so let us float this thing up. And I'm going to be going kind of fast here with the floats, if I do this correctly. But you will get faster and faster as you do this more. Also, I apologize. I do see that you guys are sending a few things in chat there. I just kind of wanted to make sure I kept my train of thought here as we're finishing this last bit up. But I have not... I'm not ignoring you. I do see that you guys are saying some stuff. I will respond in a moment. Let me just make sure I have this done. Okay, so you see how we're getting, how it's aligned right there so far? Okay, okay. Oof. Okay, so now this should be starting to poke through the top of the build, right? So we had it aligned here with our bathroom tiles and waymarkers there. And now if we go up to the top, it should be popping through right at that corner that we wanted it to be at. And there we go. We can see, I'm gonna take away the waymarker just so you can see better. There it is, popping through at the corner, right along with the bathroom tiles. And you might need to play around again a little bit with the positioning, but basically this just allows you to line it up. So, there we go. And that is how you float stuff from the basement up to the other floors. I'm going to take these items away just so I make sure that I don't forget. But yeah, okay, awesome, awesome. That concludes our lesson plan. We got it. We did it, guys. We made it through everything. Does everybody, or rather, does anybody have any questions? And let me now take a quick look here at the comments you guys have been saying. So, here, I'll sit at the bar. Why not? Let's have a seat at the bar and read some final closing comments while sipping on some sake. All right, so, Aramore, why do you need to be under the stairs though, other than Harry Potter RP? Yeah, so I think Liara is answering that question then. But so Aramore is asking, why would you need to get underneath the stairs, right? The bed, putting the bed underneath the stairs that we did. And so as you start looking around at builds, you might notice that some people build stuff on top of the stairs, right? So for example, right now, I basically just block the stairs off, right? So in this build, I'm not really utilizing the space that's the stair. Like the reason that, part of the reason this build is the way it is because there's a staircase here and there's a staircase here, right? And so in my case, I didn't want to utilize those. And so the simplest solution for me is to simply block off those areas and reorient the entryway as if it's supposed to just be like that. But realistically, actually, why the entryway is like this, because the stairs are actually here and they're being hidden. But some people like to build above the stairs or even on the stairs. So for example, sometimes people will make like a tavern or something and they'll put a set of their own stairs here and they'll float some troop stages on top of the actual staircase or something like that, right? They'll use this, see this area, right? They'll actually fill this in so it's not stairs leading down, and they want to build like a whole another section right above this. Now, you can't easily place things on the stairs, right? So for example, here I'm trying to place a cupboard, right? Let's just say I wanted a cupboard on my custom area above the stairs here. I cannot just place it down. But what I could do is I could go underneath these stairs right? And then from here, I could lay out my whole like kitchen setup or whatever I need, right? Like, remember how I said for the bar counters here, I wanted to lay them out all flat together and then push them all up at one time. So this might be the case here too. You may want to put a bunch of partitions here and a bunch of cabinets and get them all aligned underneath here first, and then just push them up through all the way up as you need them. So that would be a reason why you might get underneath the stairs. But there are many, many reasons why you may want to get underneath the stairs, including Harry Potter RP, for, you know, for whatever you're into. Hopefully that helps to clarify that. I mean, also just, you know, to be said, there's no obligation to use any of these techniques in any one of your builds. I mean, you might be someone who doesn't want to bother with glitches at all. Or maybe you only need the bed meta thing, and that's perfectly fine. There's no, it's not like these are checkbox items that you have to use on every build or anything like that. So just merely pointing out something that I think a lot of people will eventually want to know. And I know this is one that comes up fairly frequently, is like, how do you float stuff up above the stairs? Or how do you float stuff up efficiently from below? So that's kind of why we wanted to go for these last two items on our lesson plan here. Cool. Is there any other questions that anybody had? I'm gonna turn the lights back down here. Gotta get that mood lighting, you know? So, all right. Yeah, let's get back to our chat window actually. All right. Great. Okay, so I think we're going to start wrapping things up here for today on this Housing 201 stream. Mia Code, thank you so much. I didn't even know what bed meta did it in FC room. People were complaining about camera clipping while watching. Awesome. I'm glad. So you were able to do the bed meta in your FC room. Wonderful. I hope it helped. And yeah, exactly. People, it's something very like subtle, I guess, right? That it's a little bit annoying when your camera's kind of camera clipping up into the ceiling and stuff when you have multiple layers in your house. So here we go. Bed meta is a perfect way to address that. And also from like an immersion RP kind of standpoint, it really is helpful to not remind people that they're in a build with a custom ceiling, right? Like a big part of design, whether it's graphic design or interior design or whatever, is a lot of it is supposed to be invisible. Like if you did your job correctly, people aren't supposed to notice that you lowered the ceiling. They're just supposed to feel a little bit more cozy in the space, right? You don't, like, most of the time you don't want people going like, oh man, you did a number on your ceiling, didn't you? So this is like one way where in the game here, we're able to help not break people's immersion, where right now there's a lot of like fake walls and fake ceilings going on here. And yet as I zoom my camera around here, my camera never really is able to go outside of the bounds and remind me that I'm in like a big custom build. The exception is right here, right? There's a little bit of stuff above the bar that I couldn't quite bed meta because of the way this is hanging down. Although actually I did bed meta beneath here. So if you're the bartender, you get a little bit of the spikes, but you won't go all the way through to the top. So there is actually bed meta even below here. Like there's like the spikes coming down. There's a rug here to give a little bit of color, and then there's beds above that. So yeah. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something. I hope this was easy to digest and follow along. Again, for anybody who is watching and maybe missed some parts or wants to rewatch, or if you know somebody who could benefit from this, I'm going to be uploading this onto my YouTube channel, and that is linked down below in my Twitch panels. And yeah, I'm going to be building out my YouTube channel with not just my stream VODs, but also some other, custom content, maybe some more scripted content, tutorials. Eventually, I'll probably do maybe other types of content, music and performances and that kind of thing. So it's very, very much just starting out right now as a YouTube channel. So it's very basic if you go look at it right now at the time of recording. but it will get built out more and more. So if you like what I'm doing, I'd love it if you gave me a subscribe there and followed that YouTube channel. And of course, if you haven't already, if you're listening here to this stream, I'd very much appreciate if you like what you saw, if you like my style of teaching and the vibe and stuff. Drop me a follow here on Twitch as well. I stream housing every Monday and Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Almost every Monday and Wednesday, from 4 to 6 p.m. And so, yeah, that's something you can weekly look forward to. We are going to be doing a bunch of different types of topics coming up. So now that we have these basic tutorials out of the way, and something that people can reference, we now have like a basic playing field where now I can start talking about some other topics. With I think the first major one will be that we're going to look at how to do a photo studio, and kind of showing some basics of how to set up a photo studio in an apartment or in a house, and then how you can do some lighting and that kind of thing with that. That's been another highly requested topic. So we're going to get into that. And I wanted to make sure, though, that people understood some of the basics first before we started getting into some of these other types of more niche topics. But yeah, let me see, what else is there? So actually, the next housing stream, though, I did just say I stream every Monday and Wednesday, and that is normally the case, but I have some IRL happenings that I need to attend to. Nothing to worry about, but I have some IRL things that need my attention and need my focus for the next week. So actually the next housing stream is going to be 1 week from today. Sorry, 2 weeks from today. And that will be, let me just double check on the calendar, but that will be April 11th. So I do apologize, I will not be able to stream next week or the following Monday, but I will be back with another housing stream April 11th, 2022. So mark your calendars for that. And I hope that, yeah, we'll see some of you guys again then. But for anybody who is still here on the stream and is also interested, so in addition to housing, I also kind of exist between housing and nightlife. I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry, really quick. Airmore, correct. May 11th, not April 11th. The next housing stream will be May 11th. Thank you very much for that clarification, Airmore. May 11th, 2022. 2 weeks from today will be the next housing stream. Housing stream, mind you. So why do I say that? So I exist between housing and nightlife because I also have built clubs in the game in Final Fantasy. So I built Ichi Nightclub for my good friend Rofcast. So shout out to Rofcast and Ichi. But I also built Prominence Nightclub, and Prominence Nightclub is also built entirely by myself, and it's run by myself. And tonight, from 8 to 10 p.m. PST, which is 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. EST, I'm going to be DJing a set inside that club. So, Prominence, yeah, it's my great honor to be able to build a venue and then also perform in that same venue. So, I encourage anybody watching this, come check out Prominence. You can even see it on my Twitter. I have it linked to the card website. But here, I'll give you a little teaser of it right now. So if you don't want spoilers or anything like that of what the build looks like, look away now. But here we go. I'm just gonna give you a little peek. So this is Prominence Nightclub. It is the nightclub that I built here in Final Fantasy, and I'll be DJing there here tonight. This is just a little sliver of what the club looks like, to give you a little taste. So yeah, no, it's very casual and just very much like I'm going to be DJing Anjuna Trance. If you guys know Anjuna Beats, like Above and Beyond kind of stuff. That's the type of set I'm going to be DJing tonight. It's a lot of fun. It's very like welcoming and casual. If you've never been to a nightclub in Final Fantasy before, come check it out. It's a ton of fun. it's like you can just throw it on as basically like your evening radio podcast or whatever. Even if you want to do other things or, you know, do Crystalline Conflict or something, I'll be streaming the audio from my DJ set as well as showing the in-game footage of the club. So if you've never been to a club in Final Fantasy, the way we do that with Twitch is I'll be showing the view of the club similar to what you're seeing here on screen. And then I will also be piping through the audio from my DJ software where I'm doing a live DJ set. And then everybody who wants to actually come to the club can show up to the club. And if you want to get dressed up, you can. And come dance and come hang out. And it's a ton of fun. You might meet some like-minded people who share the same love of music for you. Or maybe you'll discover some new sounds that you didn't know that you really like. I am so passionate about this. I love absolutely the housing side of it. And this is kind of like the thing that then I now funnel my housing energy towards, is to create these spaces that I can then perform in or invite others to perform in. So it's a real great union of the two worlds, you know, the sort of nightlife, electronic music scene that I'm so passionate in love with, and then also the housing, creative, world building kind of scene. So if you want to come out to that tonight, come check it out. I'm going to put up the address here right below my gameplay window, so jot that down if you want to come out tonight. 8 to 10 p.m. PST, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. EST, Prominence Nightclub. Check out the card and the little ad I have for that linked on my Twitter, which you can also find linked below. I'd love to see you guys out there. Tell your friends. Oh, I see Aramore is also seeing that his Club Orbit will be ready to show off sometime in that early May timeframe once we're back. So that'll be awesome, Aramore. I'll have to follow up. I'll have to follow up with you on that. But yes, so no housing stream next week, but tonight, which for anybody watching the future, when I'm saying tonight, I mean tonight, April 27th, will be Prominence Nightclub. Come check it out. If you're watching this in the future on the VOD, Prominence opens every Wednesday and then Sunday every other week. So today, April 27th, we have Prominence Nightclub in the nightclub. And then this coming Sunday, May 11th, there'll be a garden party where I play some more chilled out melodic house kind of music. So if you like a much more like, just like super chilled out sunset, sipping on a beer, recovery Sunday, you know, with some just like beautiful melodies and a little bit of like house grooves, then May 11th, this coming Sunday, there'll be another opening of Prominence outside in our garden stage where I'll be DJing a melodic deep house DJ set there. So yeah, you know, there's two different kind of vibes. Tonight is going to be high energy, amped up club hype, and then Sunday is going to be chilled out. You know, either get your night started, or maybe it's just the nice close cap to your weekend, whatever you want it to be. But yeah, help me spread the word. Tell your friends. Everybody is welcome to come. So would love to see you out there. Hey, Livia, glad to have you with us. And you know, Olivia has been one of the OGs who has been coming out to Prominence events since the very beginning. So yeah, shout out Livia Kyrie. You've been awesome. Aramore too. In fact, a lot of people here that we've seen in chat are also regulars at Prominence. So yeah, so don't be shy. Come out and hang out. I guess maybe it's a good also time to just say that, like, as I said, I existed between housing and the nightlife scene. And so sort of my goal or dream with my streams and my whole, I guess, artistic endeavor here is that I really am just really passionate about wanting to create venues and immersive environments and then fill them with wonderful, welcoming, loving people and share experiences together in those spaces that I create, whether it's in Final or maybe eventually other places, you know, in VR or wherever else. But yeah, so Prominence is like a perfect example of this kind of coming together where, you know, I've kind of built this environment, this space, And then I'm going to be performing some music for you guys there. And it's a space where we can hopefully come together and meet people and enjoy some vibes together. And if you are about that, or you're even a little bit curious, come out. I'd love to have you come check it out and join us. Everybody in my community, in here in the streams, and also in my Discord, link below, is really, really welcoming. And so, yeah, come check that out. It's also like a good example too of like where you can take all of this, like all the stuff that I just showed you, Housing 101, Housing 201. I don't use any third-party plugins or anything, so you know, everything I just showed you, that is pretty much how I built everything that you see. So all of this stuff here in this izakaya bar that we've been in, it's all built using those tools that I just showed you how to do. And same with Prominence. Everything pretty much that I used for Prominence to build Prominence, I've just shown you on these last 2 streams. So you already have all the tools that you need to create your own bar, nightclub, whatever you can dream of. So yeah, I think though for right now, I need to call this stream quits and get ready for Prominence tonight. I need to eat a little bit of dinner and set a few more things up. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you learned something. I hope you maybe were even a little inspired, and makes you want to build. And hopefully you come away from both my Monday Housing 101 stream and this Housing 201 stream feeling confident that you can do this too, because you absolutely can. If you struggle a little bit at first, that's totally normal, I would say actually, and just keep at it. Keep practicing, keep building, keep trying things, and you can make some incredible things happen. I have complete confidence that every one of you can do this. So don't get discouraged, and keep building, keep having fun. And for now though, I think I will say goodbye. To those of you who come out tonight to Prominence, I will see you then. And I look forward to that. For those of you who only want to join the next housing stream, again, the next housing stream is going to be 2 weeks from now. So that will be May 11th. And the same time, so for the housing streams, it's 4 to 6 p.m. PST. And that actually that same Wednesday will be another Prominence night as well. So because it's every other week, right? Again, housing is typically every week. Prominence is every other week. But in the case of next week, since I'm off, it's actually going to line up again. So we got Prominence tonight. 2 weeks from now, we'll have housing and Prominence again. So wherever I see you, I can't wait. Yeah, whenever I see you, I'll see you. Until then, though, take care, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Hopefully see some of you guys later. And yeah, enjoy. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.